Good afternoon. Oh, I did shut it off. Sorry about that. Did it backwards. Good afternoon. This is session 13E, Delivering Value Through Data Management and Analytics, the New Imperative. I'm David Levine. I'm the Vice President of Digital Transformation for New Era Technology. I've been coming to this event for 9 years. It's one of my favorite events, been a sponsor for 9 years. I love this event, so I'm glad you're all here. I hope you've enjoyed yourself so far. And I hope you enjoy the panelists we have here today. They're all very fascinating people, especially the guy on the right over there, my brother from another mother, Mark Johnson. We'll kind of hold questions till the end, if you would, and I'll bring this microphone around. Please use the microphone so that you're caught and recorded, so that when you watch the playback later on, you can hear yourself ask your questions and how smart you were in the question that you asked. And right now, I'll hand it over to Mark.
Thanks, Dave. Mark Johnson, so I'm Regional Vice President of New Era and Executive Leader of our Strategic Data Management and Analytics Group. I volunteered in 2012 to help Dr. Wang with something at Symposium, and I never got away. So I've been helping out every year since 2012. We've got a great panel today, and I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves. I'll apologize. One of our panelists, Sanjay Saxena, had an emergency come up at the last minute and had to cancel, so it'll just be the three of them. But amid the backdrop of a challenging economy, data and analytics leaders are increasingly being asked to focus on delivering value through insight that empowers executive decision-making to better navigate challenging waters while holding on to growth and expansion objectives. Innovations in machine learning, IoT, and most recently ChatGPT, et cetera, generative AI, have made it, which are reshaping the landscape of analytics capability, have made it increasingly challenging. So these panelists are going to shed some light on kind of the approaches they're taking as leaders to work both in the C-suite and within the business and across the business to deliver that value. With me today, I have Gokula Mishra. Gokula, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure, check. Yeah. I'm Gokula Mishra. I've been 2 years with Direct Supply, and prior to that, I used to lead globally data analytics and supply chain for McDonald's, and have had experiences in about 7 or 8 industries in my career, and I have been fortunate to spend all my career in data analytics space, so I'll try and bring experiences from all those years to answer some of the questions.
Great. And then we have Sylvester Morgan with us from Cummins.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here, Mark, and thank you for the invitation to be on the panel. I'm Executive Director of Enterprise Data Management for Cummins. I joined Cummins 2020, right in the heart of COVID, and didn't meet a soul for the first year and a half with the company, but I'm the first official data leader for the company. We've been on a fascinating journey over the last 3 years to accelerate our journey to becoming a data-driven company at Cummins. Many of you know Cummins as a diesel engine company, but we also manufacture power systems and a whole host of other things that I'll get into later in the discussion.
Great. And last but not least, we have Nick Hamilton with 8451.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. Nick Hamilton. I lead our shared services and data group at 8451. So our core infrastructure, all of our data products, and then our core methodologies we use across the business. We are the data science arm of Kroger, 8451. Very weird name. It's the longitude of the city of Cincinnati, which we look at customers longitudinally. That's real catchy. That's great. It's hard when you're filling out a survey or filling out something that says your company name is invalid because there's no characters. So it's a pain in the butt, but it's really great. My career started off as an actuary, so math and probability nerd. Most of my career is actually in data science. The last few years, I found my way into infrastructure and data somehow, and I've learned a ton. It's been a lot of fun, but my background definitely is more in how we use the technology we're putting together. So that's the spin I've been bringing to it, but learned a lot along the way and excited to talk about the subjects today.
Awesome. Well, let me throw the first question out to the panel. So, here we are in the first quarter of the 21st century. It's almost closing. It's 2023. It's amazing, isn't it? But, our business leaders are hungry for insight to drive value in their organizations, and that insight's being delivered through data and analytics. But it's an odd economy. We're in these sort of uncharted socioeconomic waters where traditional gut instincts are failing, and what some key challenges are that the organizations are facing today are diversifying rapidly in front of us. So can you just share maybe what, from your unique perspective at your organization, starting with you, Gokula, are challenges on the table that you hear coming from the C-suite toward your organization from an insights requirement perspective?
Yeah. When we talk about insights, I kind of put it in two buckets. One is insights that is needed to run the company, and second one, insights needed to change the company. And we tend to spend a lot of time talking about insights for changing the company, but I put equal emphasis on insights needed to run the company, because that actually pays the bill, that actually provides the money for changing the company. I find that running the company, generally, we've gotten pretty good at the reporting side, which basically tells us what happened. We also are pretty good now with tools automating, answering questions, and bringing out some of the insights around how it happened, why it happened. And I think we are getting to the point where the leaders are asking the question. So, okay, I understand why, what, and how. I need to know what will happen. I think we are getting there. Some companies are farther ahead in that journey, and and most companies are starting in that journey. And of course, the next one is, so what should I do, which goes into more of a prescriptive. When we talk about changing the company, the insights that you need is quite different. And a lot of those changing the business, first the vision and the strategy needs to come from the business. And the data and analytics and AI and other tools that are there is to support it, where you actually sometimes don't know what questions you are trying to answer. So that is a challenging area to support the business when they're trying to change the business.
And at Direct Supply, I know you lead the analytics team, and innovation is a big agenda item for the business. What is your, from a leader's perspective, what is your point of view on how your organization is shifting to meet those demands?
So we tend to spend quite a bit of time spending our time with our customers, which is in the senior care industry. And that actually provides the impetus for where the change needs to happen, where the innovation needs to happen. And not all innovation is technical innovation. Some innovation could be in the process side, some innovation could be on the staffing side. For example, senior care industry is going through a lot of staffing shortage right now, and so we are trying to introduce robots for helping out in the staffing, which we never thought would be an area of innovation for us. Mm-hmm. So the opportunities that presents itself is something that you need to really be in the field, work with your customers, and identify those opportunities for innovation.
So your team is getting a little bit more customer-facing in its engagement. That part of it helping to pull in the insights.
You care if I added to that?
Jump.
I love that. I love what you were saying on that, because the closer you can get to the business, the better. So a few years ago, when I came into my role, I came from one of the business-facing units, and one of the things I quickly found out is in the teams I kind of started working with, all of them have been in this space for a decade, right? They haven't been in the business. So what we've been trying to do a lot recently is do rotations from the centralized groups into our business units. So taking data science roles, doing a lot of swapping. One of the best parts is in our centralized space, it's a lot better to understand what our customers need without having to ask and coming from there. It also helps because of adoption. Like we're putting people from our group into the business unit who can take advantage of the things that already exist. So one of the things early on to help make that even tighter is bringing people from each area into it and getting more diversity of thought.
And I don't know if the audience knows that 8451 is a unit of Kroger, the Kroger Corporation. And Kroger's, headed toward $200 billion in grocery retail. Very large grocery retail organization in the United States. So when you talk about what you guys do for Kroger, that business swapping is between entities. Is that correct, Nick?
Well, I was actually just thinking within 8451, but yes, both. Like we've had a lot more movement between the data science group taking on business roles, even at Kroger. Because there's, again, Kroger business folks, Kroger technology folks, and then our data science, and we've been trying to make moves in between those three, on top of even within the groups themselves.
And we'll stay with you for a minute because the pandemic forced a lot of changes onto Kroger as a grocery retail organization in the way that it delivers its products and services to its customers. And I know data played a big role in that, and insights in terms of understanding customer demand and preferences, whether it's online shopping and substitutions for products that were out of stock, et cetera, became just almost overnight, gargantuan.
It wasn't a
demand for you
nice to
guys.
have, it was a must have. Right? It was a must have.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did that affect the way your teams were organized to respond?
I would say, like, not necessarily in how we were organized, but I think it was the urgency. It went from what we were putting on roadmaps as nice to have and working multiple years out to, like, we need it and we need it now. So I think it was a rallying cry for our teams around what truly is most important. I mean, during that period of time, basically everyone went from going into the grocery store a lot, a very small part of Kroger's business being digital, to no one wants to go in the grocery store because it's not safe, and we need to be ready for that. So in our world, a lot of it was about how fast we can derive insights, right? So when I think about, if you're, shopping for groceries is not the most exciting thing in the world, right? When you go online and, well, it's true. I mean, you buy the same gallon of milk every week. Like, it's very predictable what your next shopping experience is going to be in the grocery world. So, like, how do we make it as easy as possible for you to get everything you know you're going to want that week and just be focusing on the things that might be unique to that week? Our job is to make sure it's as seamless for you to have that experience online, so you keep doing it at Kroger, right? And when you think about the urgency, what we quickly found out, like, there's delivery and then there's pickup. At pickup, if you go to pick up and you have to wait 20 minutes, we basically found the period of time that if a customer waits longer than this number of minutes, they do not use it again, right? So it's very clear to us that if we're not able to hit these goals, we're losing customers. So I think basically leveraging the data to drive our priority and acting quick was a really big, I think it actually was inspiring because we realized we can move a lot faster than our plans. So how do we take advantage, learnings from the crisis and then apply it into our everyday when we're not in that same
Well, and I think that's a really important point because you've demonstrated an ability to move faster and deliver value faster. And so now there's an expectation of your ability to sustain that delivery of value to the kinds of insights that are needed as they come up along the way. Sylvester, can you share with us from the perspective of Cummins?
Yeah. So just to, kind of a little bit of the backdrop on our footprint. Cummins, financial services, grocery business, manufacturing. We are a 104-year-old company founded in 1919. We have about 75,000 employees, $30 billion company. We operate in 190 countries and territories around the globe with about 110 manufacturing facilities and 20 or so odd distribution centers around the U.S., for example. So you think about the problems that we're solving is really multidimensional, right? So across all functions, all of our business units, tied to the company's high-level goals and objectives around top-line revenue growth, profitability, internal efficiencies, driving to a destination zero, which is being stewards of the environment in terms of reducing the carbon footprint, and then powering a more prosperous world by making people's lives better. Is our mission. So, problem-wise, on those dimensions of profitability and growth, looking for ways to drive cost out because not always can you identify revenue growth opportunities, but you can always minimize costs and drive internal efficiency. So we balance that equation that way. But we're in a transition right now in the automotive industry. As you guys know, we're moving from internal combustion engines to electrical engines and powertrains. So, we're making that pivot, and it's not turning on a dime. It's not a speedboat turn. It's an oil tanker size turn, right? When you're making that type of shift in the economy. So our customers are asking for, how do you enhance our experiences in terms of driving your vehicles? How do you make the engine more fuel efficient? How do you fast track service events so that we can get vehicles back on the road quickly? Because with the fleets, if they're not out there driving goods across the country, they're not making money. Those trucks are idle. So what we're focused on right now is, predictive analytics, driving internal efficiencies, cost out, putting the power of the choice and the experience in the customer's hand about the driving experience they want, and doing that over the air where it's a seamless experience for the customer, right? These are things that are considered table stakes now, whereas 5 years ago they would have been very innovative, but now the customers are saying, we just expect you to have this ready for us, Cummins. You know, if we're driving our vehicle from a truck from Canada to the US, we expect you to know the longitude and latitude of that vehicle and make over-the-air, you know, calibration updates to the engine, knowing that now I'm in the US and I got to comply with US law and regulation. That's the level of sort of prognostics, predictive maintenance, and, you know, enhancing the user experience.
So those kinds of business requirements are driving a different kind of demand signal on your teams. How are you responding to those signals? What are you having to do differently in the resourcing, in the alignment and engagement of your staff out in the lines of business around those kinds of capability enablements?
It's a great question, Margaret. I think, you know, we're sort of in this sort of irrational exuberance hype cycle around AI, generative AI right now, right?
Are you alone there?
But at the end of the day, you know, 60% of what we do is still foundationally the same as what we've been doing for years. You got to have good, solid data governance, understand where your data is, who's using it within context, good quality data, good master data, privacy and protection of that data. So if you set aside the foundational capabilities that haven't changed and probably won't change anytime soon, we're engaging based on a prioritized use case basis, right, across every function of the business, and that's different, and it's an adaptive model because supply chain may be looking at inventory optimization, logistics is looking at warehouse space, utilization and optimization. Sales is looking at upsell, cross-sell. The digital organization is looking at enhancing customer experiences through prognostics and giving the customer insights on how the vehicle's performing, uptime, reliability, and those kind of things. So we're responding via innovation, I think is, in a word, is what I would say. Right? We're having to innovate very quickly because the market is changing rapidly and the competition is stiff. So we're on a very accelerated journey, and data is the core foundational component of that. We as data leaders in the room, this is our moment, right? I mean, we've been working at this for many, many years, and now all of a sudden data is front and center. So it's a pretty exciting journey, and data is playing a key part of that.
You talked about the kind of rational exuberance era around AI, and so we've got ML, AI, generative, natural language processing, capabilities all hitting the table at the same time, and a lot of these technologies are consumable in the consumer segment by our business leaders who want to see and understand how those technologies can be brought back into the commercial segment in our spaces. How are you handling the sort of the navigation of the hype thought in the C-suite and the acceptable use and opportunity need? Gokul, I know you're smiling. We talked about this. You'd like to take that question to begin with. How are you handling keeping people calm and focused on what's feasible and realistic and best practice for the problems to be solved?
Yeah, always, if you're focused on the business use case, I think it helps. So you could get a question from, the CEO or the CFO or the chief marketing officer, someone coming and saying, are we using generative AI to, my team is already using generative AI, and you're like, right? So I think that there are a couple of factors that goes into it. One, focus on the business use case. So that actually then grounds people to start thinking about the business value rather than what the hammer is, and kind of you flip the discussion that way. The second is education. So you need to educate everyone on what, in this case, is generative AI. I mean, tomorrow we'll have some new technology, and so you need to continuously educate what exactly the technology is, because they're just reading some papers, talking to people, and may have totally a different. Generative AI, for example, a lot of people think that generative AI creates things, which is totally false. Generative AI is really good at assembling, from a vast knowledge graph to looking at all the probabilities of the connections, and it basically puts things together, not necessarily create anything. And so once they understand what it does, then you can clearly see that they actually are then more aware of what business use cases it can help and which ones it cannot.
So my approach is interesting, depends on who you're talking to, right? So if I'm talking to the CEO or I'm talking to my commercial business partners, my job is to scare them, right? Like, just so you know, if we just jam our data in this and you make decisions off it, it may not be right, and then you're on the hook for it. Like, how are you going to feel about that? And then from a security, have we done everything to make sure that our data is not getting in and being used by our competitors in this situation? So, in those conversations, I'm trying to scare them, right, to slow them down, right?
Yeah.
When I talk to my team, I'm like, why are we doing all this? Can't generative AI do all this? Like, you all need to be dreamers, because they're all like, they're tempering my expectation, right? But I feel like my job is to push them, right? Like, I'm not saying like just let it loose, but I think they want to be, my team definitely wants to be more conservative and thoughtful, which I really appreciate. So, but I want to push them, right? We need to get there faster. And when I talk to the business leads, it's like slow, slow, slow. And then when I kind of talk down, it's let's go.
Yeah, we're taking a very pragmatic approach about it, right? Similar to what Nick and team are doing is just really trying to get folks to slow down and take a deep breath, because first we put guardrails up saying our data stays within the firewall. Now the risk with that is that someone outside the company gets to tell the narrative for you, right, by loading whatever they can find on your company into a model. But we've taken a very pragmatic approach. Everything, as I mentioned before, tied back to what are our company's goals. If it's revenue, growth, profitability, we are focused more on the ML component, looking at things like revenue at risk, based on supply chain resiliency issues and inventory challenges. What revenue do we have at risk based on the backlog of orders that are out there, and how can we satisfy those and reduce that risk of recognizing that revenue? Things like machine detection anomaly on the manufacturing floor. You can take something that's all like a fraction of a centimeter off on a manufacturing press or something, and all of a sudden you got quality defect issues. So those are the sort of pragmatic examples that we're pursuing. And then the other piece I mentioned around the predictive maintenance piece, right? We try to let the customer know 90 days in advance based on fault code readings coming off sensors on engines, that based on what we're reading on the failure modes on that, we are predicting that you're going to have an outage on a fuel injector within the next 90 days, so it's best to go in and get that service to avoid any downtime. So those type of examples.
So one of the things I like about what the three of you, how you come to the table as leaders in data and analytics, is that you really you're speaking first in business terms about use cases, about business problems, about opportunities to protect revenue at risk or to satisfy customer demands. And we've been in a number of the sessions here at Symposium, we've heard a lot of the speakers talk about the importance of being a business person, thinking first, thinking use cases first, thinking business problems to solve first. And that is, I think, also indicative of the fact that the role has to be agile, your role, changing and evolving with the business as it changes and evolves, meaning and also implying that your teams have to change and evolve along with that in order to stay, relevant in the value delivery equation. So as you guys think about that problem to solve, what insights are you sharing with your next level down leaders in the teams that you have about how their roles have to shift to follow you where you follow the business? Can you comment on that, Gokula?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the role of whether generative AI or data analytics, primarily in a simple term, the value that data analytics AI generates is improve the speed and quality of decision making throughout the organization. I mean, that's the bottom line. You can't do either one. You can't have high quality decisions, but it takes a year to make. You can't have low quality decision, but you can make them every 10 minutes. So either way, it kind of doesn't work. So you need to figure out a way to collaborate with various stakeholders. So one of the things that we do, for example, in case of generative AI, we bring people together to allow within boundaries to innovate. So they work together to work on use cases so that we can kick the tires, but we know the risk, we have the boundaries known, and that actually generates a lot of enthusiasm that it's a managed way to innovate, even with generative AI.
So you're creating some innovation spaces and embracing the technology with
That
the
is correct.
business in partnership.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say in our world, I think the biggest changes we've gone through is kind of roles, what your role is today and what your role is in the future. I think about like product managers in our world. We need really good AI product managers to drive priority of this space, which means they understand their domain. People who understand the domain probably weren't previously product managers. They're people who were leading data science and driving data science work before. So I'm doing a lot of selling and excitement around transitioning people who were previously doing the data science themselves to becoming like the product manager who are driving the priority and future vision of where we're going. And in the early stages, that's a tough sell because people who are data science love data science. Like they take a lot of pride in that identity. How do you start to share some of the people who've become very good at that new role? I also share like how much money that makes in the industry too, just to get people a little bit excited about these types of roles and why they're important. But get it. I think a lot of times it's selling some really high potential people, those being successful and using those wins to get other people excited about the opportunity.
So let me toss did you have something to add there before you ready for the next question?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to Nick, but I think it's just shifting the mental model and getting folks to, not look at data in terms of traditional data warehouses and data domains and how we segment data, but breaking the silos and taking more of a panoramic view of data and looking at the interoperability of data across various data products that we produce. Because oftentimes it's the same data that solves numerous problems. A supply chain inventory problem could be related to a sourcing supplier raw material issue, or it could be because we're having too many service events tied to an outage on a certain part because of a quality issue. So it's all really sort of this constellation of problems that the same data can solve, and getting the team to shift the mental model on looking at more of that panoramic view across data and what are the problems that we can solve more broadly across business areas using data. Yeah.
Well, that takes me to the next question, which is kind of a tangent on that, but we talk about data-driven culture and the transformation of, we've heard a lot of the presenters talk about value being found in the last mile, which is consumption, right? But there's a lot of work that has to get you the foundation to get to the last mile. And so in your organizations, can you speak about what a data-driven culture means and how are you advancing, what are you doing to advance the data literacy elements so that you can sort of grease the skids for consumption in the last mile?
Yeah, I do think data literacy, having a data culture means in your role, you understand how data can make your customers' lives better, or you can do your job better because of the data you can have at your fingertips. I think where we're at 8451, because I think we've been in this space for quite a while, even across our sales roles, because we're selling an insights product, we're selling a media product, we're selling like value from data, so that's where we come from. Ours has been more about how do we do it at scale better, because I think a lot of the times we have people recreating stuff across the organization in different ways, and I think that gets driven by better metadata. So in our organization, we've already in the spot where we can code faster through AI helpers, right? I type in a comment, gives you a set of codes like really close to what we need, and review it, QA it, deploy it, which is great. But if it knows a comment and can take us to the straight code, I'd love to take the code and get metadata comments out of it, right? And I think that's where we're going next, of how do we scale capturing metadata? And right now it's really hard because it takes a human time to put in business logic. But if I have something that could present something to start from, that understands the code and can infer business logic, that is a huge help to scaling metadata, which I think helps reuse and ultimately driving our data culture in a bigger way. So that's what we're not there yet. We're more on the front end of that, but that's coming very soon and something we're really excited about.
Sylvester?
Yeah. So it's about value, and our mantra, and it's funny, I even had T-shirts made for the whole organization. We hand them out to our key stakeholders as well. Data is a team sport, right? And so it's about getting everybody on board. And data is that one thing within the company that every single person has some ability to impact at the point of entry, right, into any system. That's the one thing every single 75,000 of our employees have in common. So, data is a team sport, and you have to have commitment to start and consistency to finish. And so we operate on those principles and demonstrate value along the way, where in the end, you make the turn and you generate pull, whereas as data leaders, we're oftentimes having to sort of knock on the door and sometimes kick the door open, and they still want to kick us out. So just generating pull by demonstrating value is how we're changing the culture. And
Did you
showing
make
impact.
75,000 T-shirts?
No.
I feel like that's what I was like, I can use it. I'll take one. If you got it.
Hey, they got to have commitment to get a T-shirt.
He only made 20 T-shirts.
I made 20. Go, Glenn.
Yeah, I look at data culture and data literacy and data maturity, kind of, they all go together. We look at it in two levels. The first level is you first have to achieve the first level of maturity before you go to the second level. First level is, how do people actually understand what they do and what the business does on a day-to-day basis? In working with the customers, working with the products team, we're working with the supply chain. So they need to understand what they do in terms of data. And then the next level is trying to take to take that understanding to ask the next level of questions, where they basically are thinking about asking new questions, meaning something they actually don't do on a day-to-day level, but questioning in terms of how do I improve something. And once they understand their day-to-day working in terms of data, it is amazing how they go to more of an experimentation mindset, asking a lot of new questions. And of course, as on the technical level, you have to make sure that data is made available. There's a data catalog that is accessible, and all the making it easy for them to go to the next level.
That's really interesting. And so just making them aware of the data aspects of their day-to-day operation is kind of that foundation, and then allowing them to see that data in the reporting and insights layer next up allows them to then begin to get an appreciation, is what you're saying.
And also it helps for you to bring the what is possible, what other companies are doing when they reach that level of maturity with data, with analytics, with AI, because sometimes they haven't done this before. So it's difficult for them to cross that boundary and start thinking about what can I do next. So we have workshops where we actually talk about other industries, bring other speakers, and show the team what is the art of possible.
This is a part of the journey to data literacy.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Mark, I want to just add something to that in terms of that whole notion of democratizing data. At Cummins we have 38 ERP systems and probably over 2,500 systems in the company in general. So it can be very difficult to understand what data is available, and even more difficult to figure out how to access it and get to it. So one of the things that we've done to really propel things is deploying a data democratization portal, data.cummins.com, where data products are published, they're explained. A user, if they find something useful, they can rate it 1 to 5, they can request access, and so forth and so on. So really making it a point and click exercise versus 3 meetings and 5 phone calls to figure out how do you get to the data. And that's very, very important in a company of our size, where you really want to make efficient use of everyone's time, as opposed to answering sort of the basic blocking and tackling type questions.
So that does take me down a path. There's a question here later, but I want to jump into it now. You mentioned data.cummins.com, which is a marketplace of data products that have been published and created. Can you comment on the approach that you've taken to create data products, and how is that aligning to business problems to be solved so that you can enable that value acceleration in the last mile?
Yeah, so we're making a shift to data products, right? Because we're breaking that traditional silo mode where there was a supply chain data warehouse, there's a purchasing data warehouse, there's one for every function. So really getting folks to understand, how do you look across these different data sets and connect them, because we're not just solving discrete problems, but we're the end-to-end flow from a product lifecycle standpoint, right? So publishing those data products, explaining them, and then letting the users know what they can get from it. So, supply chain is interested in inventory, purchasing interested in sourcing, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'll talk a little bit about, if it's okay, one solution that we built is called the product lifecycle data platform, where we look at, engineering bill of material, manufacturing bill of material, service bill of material, sourcing of the raw material, everything that went into that engine serial number, including service event, warranty claims, all the way through to sustainability, emissions, and ESG. So laying out a full end-to-end lifecycle view of data where our business partners can go out and start selecting based on the problems they're solving, those discrete data sets that they need access to solve that problem.
And those
I
have
would
been
say that we're on a journey, Mark. I would say we're not 100% there, but we're on the way.
What is the wrapper around data.cummins.com as it relates to making the organization aware? How are you marketing it? How's the word getting out, I guess, that this is the place to go?
Yeah, so it's going to be published soon on the Cummins.com, the internal site, and we're working with communications. In fact, just met with them last week on drafting the communications on how we want to publicize this more. Right, so it'll be visible throughout the entire company globally, and just making sure that it's ready for prime time, if you will, and can handle all the requests that we know are going to come. It's because folks are thirsting for data out there to try to solve their problems.
Our journey on this is
Yeah.
we tried to build that platform ourselves first a few years ago. It just didn't go well. So we've evolved into like buying more out of box, probably still rebranding it the same way. But we have enterprise company level. We have our revenue goals. We have some other goals, and one of our top platform goals. We have a set of platform goals. I think there's 3 of them. One of them is the number of registered assets we have this year and that new tool. So making sure that we're all doing our part, not only to leverage the data for our specific use case, but actually making it available for others to actually access. So we've gone as far as making that a goal because it's a commitment we're committed to.
Were you going to add something else?
Well, yeah. Just one last thing. We had 1,000 data products, right? So, and that's across supply chain logistics, and I think service area. That's not even the full set of data products for the company, right? So, it's one of those, get it going, and then drive adoption, and then inspire others along the way to come on board.
So let's change. I have kind of a final question thread here as we think about privacy and ethics, bias in data, societal harm, and other major concerns around the rapid adoption of AI and ML, generative AI. That's been a topic, and generative AI has been a big topic at Symposium this year. The promise is speed to efficiency and value of the technology applied. The risks associated with it on the other side are equally as sizable to manage. How are you guys approaching that dimension of the conversation around the acceptable use of AI? Nick, do you want to start?
So I think there's standards that everyone probably already had in place, which is around privacy, compliance, security. But for AI specifically, we have basically a responsible AI framework in place that has a number of different things we actually use at the company to do it, and then there's a set of basically principles we want to be true separately as we develop it. But some of the things to think about that we've kind of put in place to help execute that are things like architectural reviews and science reviews before things go to production. So a science review is we're reviewing the methodology output, bias in the model, that type of stuff, where we bring in different sharp people from basically the domain that exists and review it before it goes to production. Finally, also an ML ops platform capabilities. So, our most frequently leveraged sciences across the organization, we have everyone deploying those in the same way. We have visibility into drift of those models. So just trying to drive as much consistency into the things we do repeatedly at the company so that we feel highly confident in how those are being deployed.
Gokul?
We do have data security policies in place in terms of data storage, privacy, usability, sending data to other platforms outside the company, and so all of the aspects, it is there in the data policy. And then you think you have figured it out, and then generative AI hits you, where you need to start looking at everything and say, okay, what are we going to do? Because you don't want to send your data to OpenAI and never know how much of that is going to show up somewhere else, right? So some of the ideas that we'll be exploring is actually using synthetic data as a way to leverage the power of AI, meaning you still are compliant with privacy and other data policies. You basically create a synthetic data, which is a type of data that actually walks like, quacks like your original data, which means if you generate the model, train the model, you still get a model that's pretty much you can bring it back and use, but you have not exposed your original data. So looking at new techniques to do that. We also are looking at training our own model, not using outside ones, so that our data doesn't go out.
Great. Well, I think that's going to bring the panel discussion to a close, and I want to open it up for questions and answers. We have about 15 minutes we wanted to reserve for the audience. So, Dave, do you have questions for the panel?
Anybody have a question?
All right.
Hi, it's Ivan Herrero from Intercorp, a Peruvian conglomerate. One of the ways that we're trying to drive value out of the data that we have is not just by applying predictive analytics on top of the data, but also enabling our business units to untap some insights and drive value through taking different actions. But what we're finding is that we can process the data and put some insights in front of our business teams, but then they're not able to translate those insights into an appropriate action. So I'm being asked by the CEOs to get more involved and help them identify or come up with some ideas on how they can activate those insights. So have you found these kind of challenges that data leaders having to take the role of the business to actually convert the insight into proper value and keep things going? Because it's hard enough what we have to do. If we have to also do the job of our business teams, it's an impossible task.
It's a very common problem.
Yeah.
So don't think that you are facing only the problem. So there are a number of dimensions to it. I think we get trained on tools and techniques, but we don't get trained on how do you use the tools and techniques with the data and then activate it, which is how do you use it to make business decisions. The training there and the skill development there is something that's lacking. So suddenly you have the data explosion, suddenly you have analytics tools are available, suddenly you have AI and Gen AI and everything else available, but the business users only know a certain way to make the decision. So that's an area that you have to find. So what we have done is we have kind of always in every group, you'll find people that actually know how to do that. The number may be very small, and so we kind of identify those people and we make them the champions. And they are the ones, then they are seated, and so they go and kind of increase the way. So it is a journey. There is no magic bullet that is going to come up, and that's where the decision making at different levels. If you're doing operational decision making, of course there is least amount of risk. If you're making planning at a monthly or quarterly level, the risk goes up a little bit, but it's still not that much. But if you're making strategic decisions, then obviously you better know how you're using data analytics to make those type of changes in your company. And so it requires a different level of maturity. So you need to identify people who actually have those skills, even if in very, very small numbers, and use them to slowly expand.
Yeah, the thing I would add is I think a lot of times if you're from the center and trying to give insights to a specific business unit, you really need to know their business unit and then the specific data they have to make it actionable. So I think similar to what you said, it's how do we equip those people with the right skills, but also the right patterns? What are the most repeatable things of creating that insight or creating that data, and how do we make it as easy as possible for those people to be able to do it themselves? So a lot of times we try to remove ourselves as a bottleneck, and we often call ourselves across the board as self-service. So how do we equip those people with the skills, the tools, and then the patterns so that, even if you think about tools like Power BI, how your company uses Power BI is like different than another company, and how do we make it as easy to use that tool in our walls is like a lot of the things we also focus on.
Yeah.
We do also provide online skills development programs for people to actually, you can do everything right. The graph is in front of them. There are 3 bars going. Some actually will look at that and say they will have 10 different questions, and others will look at that and say, okay, and continue to behave the same way as they were doing before. So that's the skills development that we encourage people to take classes. We have local universities, we have certificate programs that we encourage both the technical side as well as the business side to go learn about how to interpret data, visualization, storytelling. There are all kinds of skills that is lacking in both technology side as well as on the business side.
Yeah. Just to build on that a bit, the traditional business analyst type roles won't work in this mode, right? Because it's not a throw it over the fence order taker. It's you got to be tied with the SMEs or the SMEs out in the business, working elbow to elbow, understanding what challenges they're trying to solve, and then, quantifying that, right? You got to have tangible business quantifiable value associated with the work, and that's what's going to, at least what I found, generating a pull, right? If you can demonstrate that, if I can do X, Y, Z for you, are you on board? Typically, the heads are going to nod vertically, and they're going to go, yeah, absolutely, let's go, right? And so I would say don't approach it in a traditional waterfall or team-based approach. Embed yourself in the business, understand what their challenges are, understand what they value, how to quantify that, and then work with your finance partners to capture that value.
And the other thing that I would point out is the more of a cultural issue that you're dealing with. It has nothing to do with CDO or data or analytics capability. We always have done decision making in a hierarchical way. And so that is fear in people, even if they develop the skills and they have 10 different ideas, unless there's change in the way we make decisions and we collaborate and people are encouraged to think and ask new questions and experiment, it's not going to change.
Well, I think that's really key. It's a cultural change management exercise on the business in terms of the skills that are relevant in a world where data is available and insights available to enhance decision making, right? It's trusting that the data can enhance what the gut sees or validate or invalidate what the gut sees and feels. And I think that's missed sometimes in organizations. We see it a lot in our clients where the investment is on the capability enablement and the tooling and the ability to produce the insights, not on the organizational training to adopt and consume in the final mile those insights into the business decision-making value chain. And I think, so that's a piece, I think that's a piece that CDOs are starting to push the business leaders to invest in.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah. Other questions or comments? Right in the front.
Yeah, so Nick actually mentioned something that I thought was really interesting. He talked about the, scaling the automated creation of metadata. And I was just wondering, what sort of things you've done to dabble with that so far, and also, have some of the other, panelists dealt with that topic as well, and, what are your thoughts on that?
I would just say we're in the early stages of it. We've scaled definitely the comments to code. We have not fully we've just started like POCing that and seen some really positive results, but we haven't put that into everyone's hands just yet. So right now in the early stages of essentially testing that out.
Yeah, we generally have done most automation on the technical metadata as much as it's possible, and it is difficult to do it on the business side, business metadata side, because the context of what something means to one unit of the business might be different. So the contextual variations requires manual intervention and manual involvement to develop those business metadata and catalog. So automating that could actually be dangerous in some cases, because you're going to capture a context that you might miss 5 other contexts.
Yeah, I think our goal on that is not fully automated blind, but give you a starting point, right? Because
Yeah.
if it takes you an
Give a
hour to
starting-
document
yeah.
it and we can make it 2 minutes to document it, you can get a lot more business metadata.
Totally.
Yeah, and I
Technical
think-
metadata, like we've had that before. But
And I think what you were saying is applying machine learning on the code to kind of reverse engineer the business logic out of the code.
Correct.
And that giving you a tabletop to start refining and enhancing with the business engagement on it, right? Because a lot of that business metadata or the business interpretation is found in the logic in the code,
Correct.
right, as it was originally written. So I think there's a lot of promise there.
Yeah.
I think is what
and we're just we're testing it out right now.
Yeah, and Carl, the only thing I would add to that would be, we have the scale part of it is, working with external cloud providers like Google that have really mastered this, right? And they have all the machine learning capabilities to connect the dots across data and discern what's there from a metadata standpoint. But it doesn't negate, to the points that's been made, it doesn't negate just the roll up your sleeve work that needs to take place within your data governance councils to identify what are your critical data elements, how do you drive the consistency and ensure there's quality of those so that data is usable, consumable, trusted to make decisions and run the business on. So that's the fundamental blocking and tackling that just has to be there regardless. Is in Cummins we have 14 data governance councils. We have them stood up in literally every function of the business, and they set the priority for data, right? And it's very adapted to what their needs are, where we don't go in and put a blanket saying, hey, everyone has to run their councils this way. It's what problems are you trying to solve? What data do you need to solve that? What's the state of that data, and how do we make it better? And then working with our external cloud partners like Google that have all this knowledge and technology and cloud native capabilities to go out and scan all those data sources and make inferences and connections. So that's the scale approach that we're taking. Yeah.
There's actually a question in the other metadata session. Someone asked, how do we get metadata on a product where the people that know it aren't here anymore?
Oh,
Right? And her answer was, we're starting to leverage LLMs for that. But that's an interesting, right? How do we start to extract information without? Yeah, it's an interesting challenge.
It is.
Yeah.
Other questions? There's- And then I think you were.
What specific methods and mechanisms are you using to demonstrate the value that you and your teams are delivering, and how are you marketing and advertising and that value that
Yeah.
that you're
I'll give you one example, and I'll share the mic. And then, so let's take data quality, for instance, right? Data quality was a huge problem in our company, 3 years ago, and it's still a challenge today. What we started doing was working with through our data governance councils, and getting the stakeholders who own that data functionally, and as well as the stewards assigned to steward that data, to capture, the value of if we can, drive to a consistent, supplier name. What does that mean to how we syndicate that supplier data out into the system, and how much time, how many people are manually having to do that today, and how much time are they spending doing that today manually? And then making the emotional tie saying, hey, wouldn't you like to get home to your kids by 5 instead of sticking around to 7 cleaning data, And so those are the type of strings that we pull. And then last year, we were able to quantifiably demonstrate about a $68 million in savings in data quality improvement and cost avoidance due to data quality issues. So it can be very granular, but in the end, it all aggregates and rolls up to a pretty big number in the aggregate.
Yeah, ours has been similar. We've been estimating time savings, which is amount of adoption times basically savings per unit of adoption, and we objectively measure one of them. The other one, we have a business unit validate basically how much that is. That's how we've basically measured the impact across our shared services group.
How are you publicizing that information?
I have a scoreboard, and I have I have a digital scoreboard that we use for our basically 400-person group. I have a TV next to my desk if you come to the office that has our updated stats. We post who the highest teams contributing are. We have the most recent contributions. We do raffles for teams every quarter on different ways. Yeah.
We had Jim Tayo, who was at Nationwide and was a CDO there, who had the Data Minute, where he had published this video 2 or 3 times a week where it's like, this is what we accomplished in data today, and it would go out on the internet and people would watch it and consume it that way.
Yeah, and awarding those behaviors too, rewarding those behaviors. So last 6 months ago, someone from our Data Quality Center of Excellence won a Supply Chain Business Impact Award. How often does a person on the data quality team win a Supply Chain Impact Award? But by demonstrating the value and how by making these improvements in data, that function is serving as a change agent on behalf of the business, generates the additional pool and funding and staffing and everything else that you need to move it forward continuously.
So this is related to data quality, really. You mentioned amongst the jazz of LLMs, etc. There's still the fundamental success lies in having good quality data. But having said that, in most CDO organizations or charges, you're still pretty many folks at least feel pretty helpless about data quality. You can measure data quality, but rectifying data quality is quite another job, right? It's because you don't really have control over it. It's the operations teams who have control over it, and there are data stewards who are there, but they're not necessarily excited about cleaning data, managing data, etc. And that's a huge bridge to gap. So what are some of the strategies that a CDO team can engage to actually measurably improve data quality, not just measure data quality?
I would say that my experience during my career, unless you tie the data quality to business value and business use cases, doing a massive, multi-year data quality program, you might get some funding for it. Generally, as you described, data stewards at some point are going to get bored because there is nothing kind of ties their work to creating the business value. Most of the data stewards will come from business, and they're driven by their business unit's P&L, their business unit goals, and if this doesn't link to any of that, you're not going to get the collaboration and the value or results that you're looking from a data quality. So I would say do it very incrementally, but always attach your data quality programs to some business outcomes, and people will come back and.
I think that's really key. That is the point. It should always be focused on solving some data quality glitch or issue that leads to a business impact that's visible and measurable. We had a client a number of years ago that had one attribute, which was the origination of a credit card issued either by the loyalty card processor or by the merchant, and that attribute was not being set correctly, and they found it in the data quality evaluation, and when they corrected it, it led to a $30 million positive revenue swing in a year, one data attribute. But that success led to a real commitment, a concrete story to tell around data quality and the impact of it, and the reason why funding for stewards would be necessary if the prioritization lens looked for those kinds of opportunities for the use of their time. And that program went, I think the last time I talked to the client a couple years in, there were 70 data stewards across the organization who were having a profound impact on their overall operating profitability. Yep. But that's an incremental gain. But you have to look for those kinds of crawl before you walk, before you run opportunities, I think, with data quality.
Definitely value. And then I'd say, make it systemic, right? If you can make it a systemic change. So one of the things that we did at Cummins is we embedded ourselves into the toll gate process. Right, we were going live with ERP systems, kicking the can on data quality down the road, and we were having all these post-go-live issues. So I went to the CIO, presented at the staff meeting, and said, we need to change our toll gate process, and we need to add data quality at every step of the way. Assess what's needed, profile it, change the system, put controls in place. So we embedded ourselves, made it a systemic change, and then the other thing that I can offer to you that we did was we implemented a Six Sigma-based approach to data quality, where define, measure, analyze, improve, control. So it's a very methodical approach from a quality standpoint, we're an engineering company, so Six Sigma was like speaking their language, right? So, you know, when you go in and you're employing a methodology and a framework and tools that the company's already familiar with, it makes it a bit more of a layup as opposed to having a slam dunk.
Yeah, we started capturing timeliness, completeness, accuracy, and basically anything that broke one of those was flagged as a Sub2. And we focused on reducing the number of Sub2 data incidents we had each period. And we were able to like leverage that metric and set it as a goal and put a number of different things in place to bring that down significantly.
Well, I think we're out of time. Are we on the minute?
All right. Well, thank you all for attending, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. And thanks to the panel for being here, and for Mark for moderating. And that's it. Thanks.